In my last video about the Russian cases, I ended with a cliffhanger that I know you all have been losing sleep over. I said that this concept is the foundation, the alpha and omega of all things Russian grammar. Without it, you are completely useless. What could it be? You'll find out in today's video. This is how Janie learned Russian. All right, so did you guess it? What is the foundation of your Russian language house that you're going to start building as you start learning these cases? It's gender. And this may not be a popular thing to say in today's world, but gender in Russian is not fluid. You cannot change it. It is what it is. Oh, crap. My inner language nerd is raising his hand and wanting to say something. Everyone, meet my inner language nerd.
Well, actually, that's not true, that nouns can't change gender. Did you know that metro, which is now a neuter, was originally a masculine, because it was, the long version was metropolitan. Over time, it became shortened into metro, and then eventually it became a neuter. As well as the word lebed, which is now a masculine, has a myak on the end, but originally it was, in fact, a feminine. And then linguists are currently saying that the word coffee, which is right now a masculine, because when it was first introduced into the Russian language, it had an ikratkaya on the end. They believe that in 20 years or so, it will also change gender and become a neuter. So there you go.
Okay. Thank you for that interesting tidbit, inner language nerd. I always enjoy when you raise your hand and interrupt my lessons. So this is the beginning of my textbook on the Russian cases. It's called Making the Russian Cases Easy. No such thing. Making the Russian cases a little less scary. And that will be available soon, and once it's available, there will be a little link that'll pop up here, and you can click on it and go get access to the course and the textbook and so on and so forth. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is gender in Russian. So look at this adorable little poster here. This is back from around the time of the revolution, and it's a propaganda poster that says, "The illiterate is as good as blind. Misfortune and unhappiness await him everywhere." So that's you. That's you. If you don't know gender, if you're blind to gender in Russian, that's you. You're walking off a cliff right now. So we're going to take today's video and learn some gender. As I was saying about my textbook, I use a special approach called PCP. No, not the narcotic. It means perceive, comprehend, produce. And we will do precisely that method in today's video. Also, it comes with, the online course comes with the answer keys. So after you go through it and you watch my videos that go with it, and I'm talking you through and we're laughing and we're having a great time, then you're going to do your homework in the textbook. And then you can use my video answer keys to watch me fill out the textbook and explain why I'm answering things the way I am. So super great resource for you to have. So let's talk about gender. So for those of you who have learned Latin languages, you know that those languages have gender. So this isn't something that is unique to Russian. And in fact, I'm currently struggling with this learning Portuguese. As you know, I'm married to a Brazilian and I'm surrounded by Portuguese speakers all the time. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Oh my gosh, it's maddening. So a amiga, okay? So I'm thinking, okay, things that end in a are probably feminine in Portuguese. And sometimes that's true, until you get a word like o dia, the day, which is a masculine for no apparent reason. Viagem ends in a consonant. Should that be a masculine? Oh, no. That's a feminine for no apparent reason. Then we have, okay, maybe the ending o, which I can't pronounce, by the way, is a masculine. Oh, no, that one's feminine sometimes. Oh, boom, which is masculine. And then I'm thinking, okay, maybe the ending agi, maybe that's a feminine. Nope, cidade, abacaxi. There is no rhyme or reason to it. Look at this one. O cara, with an o as a masculine, is the guy, versus a cara, which is a feminine, means the face. Like just, yeah, Latin languages are the worst. So the best news in the whole world you're probably going to hear today, unless you win the lottery, is that gender in Russian is predictable, okay? There are very few cross-dressers, and they're out there, but there's not very many. You can look at a word and 89.73%, this is a completely bogus statistic, I made it up, predict what gender it's going to be. This is, again, like the awesomest thing in the whole world. Now, there's an exception to that, and that's words that end in mягкий знак, but there are not very many of them in the Russian language, and there are strategies for memorizing when you need which. We'll talk about that later in the video, as well as I have an entire cheat sheet available to my patrons on Patreon, or obviously in this beautiful, wonderful textbook. So, by the way, come back tomorrow. I'm going to have this amazing quiz on gender. It'll start out at the beginning level. Then we'll do a quiz on the gender of things ending in mягкий знак, because I'm assuming you will have done your homework and you're going to be awesome and you'll be looking at that cheat sheet. And then we're going to have for you crazy, wacko grammar nerds who just love to know all the weird little things about the Russian language. For you всезнайки, we're going to have a quiz on like words with completely weird, wacko gender. So come back for our quiz tomorrow. Okay, so let's do some PCP, which is perceive, comprehend, produce. So when we start off with perceive, we're going to pretend like we're a Cold War spy. And we're going to put on our little spyglass, and we're going to be looking for patterns. We're going to observe, and we're going to make predictions. I think this and this is happening. And then we report back to the Kremlin gremlins, okay? So do we see a tendency happening for these words that are in the masculine category? Do we see a tendency happening for the words that are in the feminine? Do we see a tendency for the neuters? Do we see a tendency for the plurals? Again, we're coming up with a theory of what makes something a masculine, what makes something a feminine, what makes something a neuter, what makes something a plural. Okay, so do some little espionage and report back to me before I tell you the answer. Okay, so here is the answer. Think about Russian names. This is how I like to tell people. Have you ever known Russian girls? What are their names? Tatiana, Tanya, Katya. As you notice, feminines in Russian tend to end, most of the time they end in a or ya, and then sometimes mягкий знак, which we'll talk about later. Sure enough, seriously, look at these Russian women's names. Alla, Anna, Yekaterina, Sofia, Yelizaveta, Tatiana. There you go. That's what Russian feminines end in. So here's some examples. Yes, these can describe like actual human feminines. Сестра, бабушка, американка, книга, Россия, семья. Or it can describe like inanimate objects. Книга, Россия, семья, история. Those are all feminines. Okay, now let's talk about masculines. Masculines end in either a consonant or this little E with a hat. It has to have the hat, people. It has to have the hat, which is known as и краткое. И краткое. Okay? So again, same concept here. These can be describing like actual animate, like things that are actually male in real life. Брат, друг, американец. Or it can be describing inanimate objects as well. Чай, цветок, стол, учебник, музей, русский язык, for example. And then Russian has a gender that the Latin languages don't have, which is the neuters. Neuters. So neuters end in ye or o. Ye or o. Okay, some examples of these would be окно, море, лицо, слово, занятие, рабство. Right? So these are very typical neuter endings, this kind of ie or stvo on the ends of things. Also, did you know there is only one neuter word that describes like a living creature? Come back for tomorrow's quiz to find out what it is. Only one word in the whole language. Crazy, huh? All right, so then we have plurals, which I'm going to call these a gender, and it's going to drive you grammar Karens crazy. You're going to just go crazy. You're going to be like, plural is a number. It's not a gender. Fine, whatever. But I like to categorize them into four categories. The он, она, оно, and они. Fine, whatever. You can hate me for calling plurals a gender, but I'm just doing it for simplicity's sake. Plurals typically end in y or e. Okay? So let's look at some examples. Chipsy. I love that word. And then my favorite Russian word of all time, hot dogi. Hot dogi, hot dogs. Американцы, бабушки, машины, студенты. Notice these end in I and E, and when we get to our chapter on plurals, you'll understand why some of them got I, why some of them got E. Because these were all originally either a masculine or feminine to begin with, right? So babushka was originally a feminine. Student was originally a masculine. Машина was originally a feminine, right? And then we just pluralize them and they get this different ending. And you'll learn why you got which one. So then, I know you guys are all like dying inside, wanting to know the answer to this, but what about мягкий знак? What about the soft sign? Because you said soft sign can be either feminine or masculine. Как же нам знать? How should we know when it's which? So here's some examples of words that end in мягкий знак. Дочь, мать, конь, лошадь, царь, кровать, любовь. Some of these are feminine, some of these are masculine. And if you head over to my Patreon, plugging, you can get a cheat sheet on these. There are actually tips and tricks, because that's what I love to do for you here on How Janie Learned Russian, of how to know what gender something that ends in мягкий знак is. So head over to there, become a patron to get access to that cheat sheet, or it's also in the textbook, obviously. Okay, so now we're going to produce. This is where we bring the language to life. This is not Latin. This is not just frozen in time and you just memorize. No, you actually need to use these in everyday conversations. So we're going to do this little back and forth that I have actually used in real life on a regular basis. So I'm going to tell you a funny story. Well, really quick. Russians don't use the word it very much, okay? When they're talking about an inanimate object, they call it whatever gender it is. So if it's a flomastер, это он, it's a he. If it is lenta, like tape, then it's a she. Это она, окно, оно, ключи, они. So again, they don't call it an it. They call it by whatever gender it is. So one time I was walking along with my Russian friend, and we had just finished having dinner, and he's like, in English, he's like, where is he? Where is he? And I'm like, what? Did we have your kid and you lost him? Like, what happened? Who's he? Who did we lose? Because he's saying, oh no, where is he? Where is he? And I'm like, and I'm seriously panicking. I thought maybe we lost his kid, you know? Turns out, then he finally found it. He reached into his pocket and he goes, oh, вот он. There he is. He was talking about his key, ключ. And guess what? Ключ is a he in Russian. So he called his key a he, because in Russian, that's what you do. You call it whatever gender it is. In English, we would have said it. Where is it? Where is it, right? But he said he, and I thought he was talking about a person. Anyway, okay, enough of that. So we're going to do this same exercise. I'm going to say to you, где, where is something, something. Then you're going to look at the gender of the noun, and you're going to answer with the correct pronoun for that gender. So here he is, here she is, here it is, here they is, which in Russian is он, она, оно, они. And I'll put a little cheat sheet on the screen for you. Okay, so here we go. So just like me and Volodya, где мой ключ? Вот он. Next one. Где машина? You've got a 5-second timer to come up with this. Вот она. Окей, хорошо. Где метро? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Вот оно. Ага, очень хорошо. Следующий. Извините, где туалет? Вот он. There he is. The toilet is a he. Okay? Следующий. Где документы? Вот они. Вот они. Next one. Где Красная площадь? Извините, скажите, пожалуйста, где Красная площадь? Ooh, this one ends in a мягкий знак. maybe we could look at the adjective in front of it and see if we can figure out what gender that seems to look like and take a wild guess. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Вот она. Вот она, вот Красная площадь. So, how did you do? Were you able to have that exchange with me? Again, that's how we produce these grammar principles that we're learning. So, come back tomorrow. This is the big deal. This is the moment of truth. After you've done all this work in the packet and you've looked at the cheat sheets and you've seen it all breaking down and there's some different exercises for you to do, you're going to come back and it's quiz time. So we'll do a basic quiz for beginners, just like we just did. We're going to quiz you on words ending in märkisnack, which you'll better know after doing the worksheet. And then for all of you smarty pants overachievers, we will have a super fun quiz on words that are like super wacky genders that like you would not otherwise be able to predict. Хорошо? Это все на сегодня. Увидимся на следующий... Нет, увидимся завтра. Все, до свидания.